Hey there, friends. David Paulides, CanAm Missing Project. Right now, you are looking at the executive producer and big dog in the house, Huck L. Barry Paulides. And she says, Dave, don't forget to show my placard. Okay, so it's Huck TV, yes. And she's doing well, hanging out. We're in our fourth day in a row of rain up here, and it's actually good. We need the rain because without rain we have fires, and we do not like fires up here. So, yeah, we're doing good. Thanks for being here. We're going to talk about two cases today at a park I've never talked about, a national park. And before I get going on that, somebody brought up a really, really good point. Search and rescue people. I've told you before that 95 to 98% of all searches are done by people like you and me. Not rangers, not law enforcement, just normal people. And you get certified by going to search and rescue classes. Now, not every search requires you to be certified. National park searches normally do. How do you get certified? Contact your local search and rescue that's usually attached to your county sheriff, your provincial police, etc. And they always need people. It's nonstop. And they want people that are in decent shape because they don't want to rescue you because you have a heart attack out there, etc. But somebody brought up a good point at an event I was at the other day. And they said, Dave, you know, those search and rescue people, they got to be psychologically balanced themselves. Oh, this is true. And why is that? Sometimes you see some horrific things as a searcher. See bodies mangled, falling down cliffs. You search for somebody and you find them and it was a suicide. Yeah, it can be very gruesome, and I get it because I've seen that stuff before myself. So psychologically stable, and they have nightmares just like we have nightmares as law enforcement when we see things. I brought home things I'd never told my spouse before. And I'd wake up the next day and be frazzled that I even dreamed about it. And I felt bad for the people and etc. So, the reason I'm bringing this up, searchers, they give of their own, meaning they aren't getting paid. They're out there tromping through the woods looking for you or your friends. And they're doing it just for the good graces of being a good human. You know, we talk about being polite, being kind. These people are really doing a good service that doesn't get enough accolades. And unfortunately, I rarely see anyone talk about it. And I want to say that there's a lot of searchers that watch this show. And I got to tell you that you are greatly appreciated. Men and women, doesn't matter who does it. And then on top of that, you have the searchers that train canines, that have their own dog, that go out and search. And usually they're training their dog about 10 hours a week if they want a good dog. So that's a big commitment. And I just want to take a little bit of time, acknowledge who they are, what they're doing. They are greatly appreciated. And without them, a comprehensive search and rescue would not be done. That's just a fact. So to each one of you out there, a big thank you. Now, in the cases we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about some search and rescue people, what they have to do, tromping through water, working in 100-degree heat, working at -5 degrees. Yeah, the extremes that go into this. And the equipment you have to buy. Obviously, you gotta have good clothing, good boots, suntan lotion, water, extra water, bars, a cell phone, and the new cell phones come with personal locator beacons. I would highly recommend that your next cell phone have that. If you're a hunter or a hiker, it's a mandate. So let's get into the cases. First case is in Acadia National Park. Dave, where's that? It's kind of on the central coast of Maine. On the coast, on the water. Many years ago, for a hockey event, I was in Maine. We had a day free. I like going to national parks. Went into Acadia. I was stunned how gorgeous it was. If you've ever been to the California coast around Carmel, it has that kind of beauty. It is stunning. And there's a town there called Bar Harbor, B-A-R space H-A-R-B-O-R. Town is clean, nice, on the water, beautiful, good restaurants. I could have walked around there a whole weekend, and I was highly impressed. People there were polite. I just had a really good time. So I would encourage you to go. The history of the area goes back 10,000 years to a group called the Wabanaki. And then through the 17th and the 19th centuries, fur traders worked that area, trapping animals. Park was named Acadia in 1929, and it has 49,000 acres. Good sized park. There's a lot of area inland. There's a huge mountain inside the park. The most popular activities when you go to this park are fishing, rock climbing, canoeing, kayaking, bouldering, and photography is great. There's guided boat tours, whale watching, and during the winter, they have cross-country skiing. The main visitor center for Acadia Park is at a place called Hull Cove. And the best way to tour the park is they have a 27-mile park loop road, which takes you by all the highlights, and it's a great drive. It's not, don't be in a hurry. It's a slow road, but it's worth it. And from 1915 to 1940, John D. Rockefeller financed and directed construction of all the roads in the interior of the park. Back then there was a lot of dirt roads, everything got paved, everything was nice. On October 17, 1947, there was a huge fire that destroyed 10,000 acres in the park. I know we hear about, climate change, this and that, and how much our environment is suffering and we're having all these fires. If you really look back in history, there were huge fires way back. Temperatures in the park vary greatly. Up to 90 degrees in the summer, -5 degrees in the winter. Water off the coast in the ocean area is super clear and super clean. And that was one of the things I really liked about being there, which was consistent with 17-mile drive in Pacific Grove, Carmel area. You get out and you look at the water and it's just stunning. So it's nice to know we still have those clean places to go to. First case at Acadia involves a man named Chris Conley, 30 years old. It's a picture of Chris. His last seen April 28th, 2003 at 5 a.m. He was officially listed as missing on May 2nd, 2003. He was a house painter. He had a young daughter with his girlfriend, and he lived with his uncle on the border of the park. He had lived in Massachusetts in the past. His uncle lived off of a road called Breakneck Road in Hulls Cove, again, right on the border, right near the primary center to have visitors to the park visit. The visitor center's right there. Really, really close. Just to give you an idea here. This is Thunder Hole, which we're going to talk about later. This is Otter's Point Overlook. This is all park and periphery of the park on the water. Remember the city I told you of, Bar Harbor? Right here. Here's Hulls Cove, which is right where all of this is taking place. Well, on April 27th, Chris attended a party with a series of friends right on the perimeter on the outside of the park. It was a big get-together. Happened a lot. He had a lot of friends. The next morning at 5 a.m., his uncle is up, and he sees Chris walking out of the front of the house towards the visitor center in the park. So he's like steps away from the park. And it wasn't unusual because Chris liked the park, and he liked walking around the park, especially in the morning hours before he had to go to work. This was a Sunday morning. His uncle thought nothing about it. He said, oh, yeah, Chris is going for a walk. Well, Chris didn't return home that afternoon, which was really abnormal. Usually his walks were 1 to 2 hours. And on May 2nd, the uncle reported him missing to the Bar Harbor police. Now you gotta understand, Chris is 30 years old, grown man, walks into the park on April 28th. Uncle didn't want to raise the alarm. There were times where Chris would go, and he was a house painter, he would leave for a couple days at a time and get a ride and go paint houses. Well, when he didn't return, the uncle finally said, okay, I better raise the alarm. Nothing unusual about the uncle's behavior. There were rumors that Chris had taken some type of meds that were unknown. So the uncle gives the report to the Bar Harbor police. Because Chris was seen going into Acadia Park, Bar Harbor gives the case to the National Park Service, because that was the last place Chris was seen. There were rumors that Chris was seen in that 4-day time frame in Bar Harbor, although it was never substantiated. Now, he had friends all through that area. He was walking down into the park area, which eventually would go also into Bar Harbor. On May 4th, the Park Service has a formal search for Chris. Part of that is 100 searchers, 10 dog teams, police divers in the ponds and things that were in that area. It was a huge search. On May 5th, 100 searchers. They had the Cattenden Search and Rescue Team. This time they had 8 dogs. And they had the Maine Warden Service plane. Have you guys ever seen the show about the Maine Warden Service? I like watching the shows because they're outdoor shows. They're kind of law enforcement shows too. And I gotta tell you, the Maine Warden Service, highly professional, extremely good at their jobs, and are the primary search and rescue organization for the state of Maine. If you want somebody searching for you, you want them. I've seen the way they operate, highly, highly professional, thorough, and they have the right tools to do the job. So the warden's plane is flying. The chief ranger for the park was a man named Kevin Cockery. He stated that he was going to turn over the search and rescue to the Maine Warden Service. This is unusual. Usually the National Park Service will not turn over a search to local authorities or state authorities. They usually want to hold on to that control. This time they didn't. The Maine Warden Service was interviewed, and they said that when they were flying over the ponds and the ocean, that they could see divers in certain spots in the water down deep. That is how clear the water is. And they said that they could see a body if it was out there. They didn't see anything. And they said, so we feel good that we've got all the bases covered. That's what their statement was. So Chris lived on the perimeter of the park for the last several years. He knew the park. He knew the area around it. The idea that he would get lost didn't make any sense to anybody. He left his wallet at home, took no additional clothes, and left his car behind. The point behind that was, let's say if I was him, and it's 5 o'clock in the morning and I'm going to go take a hike. Well, there's no businesses open. There's no businesses open in the city that early. Why take your wallet? I'd just leave it at home and go take a hike for exercise. I can understand that. Nothing unusual in my mind for that. May 7th, dog teams scoured the park again, top to bottom from where Chris was last seen. Maine Warden Service was in the sky again. The National Park Service said that they could find no evidence that Chris was in the park. And there was no evidence he had hurt himself. And because of that, the National Park Service turns the case back to the Bar Harbor Police to investigate as a straight missing persons incident. Now, Chris's mom and dad have been on scene for the last several days helping to search for their son. I found the move by the National Park Service unprofessional. Here's why. His uncle saw him walk into the park. The park was the last place Chris was seen at. To say there's no evidence he was in the park, no, his uncle saw him in the park. Well, the Bar Harbor Police get the case. I don't know what else you could do if you were them in the intermediary. They interviewed all of his friends. They interviewed people at the party. They interviewed his uncle. They had nothing. Strange. Now, this happened on April 28th. May 25th, almost a month later, 27 days later, in a place called Winter Harbor, Maine. Some visitors to Winter Harbor were on a boat whale watching, and they come across a body floating in the water. They call the U.S. Coast Guard, they come out, they recover the body, and they turn it over to the state of Maine coroner's office. On June 2nd, the state of Maine confirmed that the body was Chris's, and they did it via dental records. Hold your taters. Chris was last seen at Hills Cove. Halls Cove, Bar Harbor, Winter Harbor. See all these islands right here? Island, island. This is a long peninsula. And he's found off of Winter Harbor? By a boat? How did he get from here over to here? I can understand going from here to down in here because of the current. I don't understand how he got over to here. That makes no sense at all. Well, Sheila Thayer was the state medical examiner spokesperson for the state of Maine. And she stated at the time they were very backlogged in cases. She said that they need to do a toxicology on the body, which will take a month, which is true. And it could take 6 months or more for the autopsy and the cause of death. What? So I did a search, a lengthy one. They never released the cause of death. They never released what he was wearing or wasn't wearing. Now, as the park was releasing this information at the beginning of the search, several times the park stated that Chris was despondent and that he often took off for long periods of time and didn't tell anybody. They framed this profile of somebody suicidal, oh, they were going to go off and kill themselves and this and that. They wanted you to believe this framework. So at the end of May, Chris's family meets with the press. And they stated, no, the press was lying. The Park Service was lying. Chris was never despondent, nor did he ever take off for long periods of time. That's a narrative they want you to believe, but it's not true. You see what I'm saying? The point is that this happens a lot with the Park Service. They want to put this picture frame around somebody and they want you to believe what they're telling you. And they want you to think they have some inside information as to this person. The family was adamant this wasn't true. And they were mad. Maine Coroner's Office never released the cause of death. They never released how long Chris's body had been in the water. Unknown if there were any drugs found in his system or alcohol in his body. The million-dollar question, folks. Chris lived in this area for years. How did the body get in the water to begin with? Nobody wants to answer these questions. Nobody even wants to look into the case. But when you know what we know, it makes you wonder, especially since the Park Service wasn't truthful about Chris and his background. This has happened more times than I hate to even tell people. People think I'm picking on the Park Service. I'm not. I'm giving you facts. I'm not giving you opinion. Next case involves a man, 49 years old, named John Wood. John lived in New York. Stop for a second. Many months ago, I told you that every once in a while, I get these cases that have the exact same name of somebody I have investigated in the past. There's a John Wood that I've done a big investigation with that disappeared in another national park that also lived in New York. Now this John Wood is 49 years old, went missing February 19th, 1992, in the afternoon. He's married to a woman named Carol. And he's a highly successful sales rep for Shawn Energy Limited. And he lives in Brewster, New York. Why did I bring this up? Because I've talked in the past that the strangeness of finding people missing with the same name is really odd. And the one time I did bring it up, people went missing in almost the exact same time frame with the exact same name. Weird. Now, John Wood disappeared at different times in the 1990s, but both from New York. I suppose it must be a common name. I don't know. Well, on February 17th, February 16th, John was on a business trip up in Maine. And he called his secretary and he stated that he was going to be back in time for appointments in the next several days. But he was stopping at a friend's house in Maine where he had business because he was having trouble with his hypoglycemia and he was tired. He was going to stop in there, relax, see his friends, take a day off. He didn't want the secretary to be upset that he was missing appointments because he wouldn't. Told his wife, everybody knew what was going on. The next day, February 17th, he told the friends that he was staying with that he thought he was good enough and he was going to leave. He felt a lot better. And on the way out, he was going to stop at Acadia Park and then drive the coastal route back to New York. Nice leisurely trip. Well, he drove his 1989 Chrysler LeBaron into Acadia Park on the 17th after he left his friends and parked it at a place called Thunder Hole on the map I showed you earlier. I'll show you again. It has a real rocky shoreline and is about 100 feet above the ocean. And it's part of that 27-mile perimeter road I was telling you about. This is Thunder Hole. And there's a big parking lot there. It's a very popular tourist attraction. There's usually always people around. And then this is Otter Point Overlook. Otter Cliff Overlook. Beautiful area in here. Got it? So John parks his car, and that's where the story's going to end for now. 2 days later, John was late to come home. So his wife and his secretary get on the phones trying to figure out where he is. They call the friends in Maine, and the friends say, yeah, he was going to Acadia Park and then going to take the coast down. So what they decide to do is call Bar Harbor Police again, tell them that the husband's missing, and could you please search for him? Well, Bar Harbor searches their city, and then they call the National Park Police, and they give them the vehicle description of what they're looking for. National Park Police that same day go out looking, and they find John's car at Thunder Hole. Now, they did the right thing. They look around, they don't see anything unusual, and they do what's called a hasty search. Calling other rangers on duty right there. Come here right now. We need to organize a search. Not an organized search and rescue, just a hasty search with the resources you have available right then and there. And they search the area around the cliffs. They search the area around the car. They search the area behind, in the open fields behind the mountain. Nothing. Well, they decide then that they're going to organize a major search. And as the primary hasty search was going on, there were mentions in the reports that they were impacted by heavy fog in the area. Well, that makes it more difficult to find somebody. So fog. The next day on February 20th, the Park Service was told by the family as they're doing their background work that John was not wearing hiking clothes. So they didn't think he was going to go off on any trails looking around, or was going to go down any boulders looking at the water. But they bring in 4 canine teams and they scour the cliffs, the rocks, the road. 25 rangers covered the regions up to a mile inland, and more boulders. And search and rescue also covered the Otter Cliffs area, that area south of the location I showed you, and Sand Beach. So there was this car, and this is that area of Otter Point, Otter Cliffs that they were talking about. They had no idea where he went, but they had to cover all their bases, and I admire that greatly. That it wasn't just we're just going to try a little bit. No, they tried hard. February 21st, an area-wide snowstorm hit the area and greatly inundated the ability of searchers to do anything comprehensive. And inhibiting the searchers like that, something weather does that we've talked about many times. So there were ground pounders on the ground and some dogs, but not as many as the day before. February 22nd, search was going 100% again. Helicopters, plane. The Maine Warden Service gave them a plane to search. 20 National Park Service rangers. The rocks along the ocean were covered multiple times. They stated that there was no evidence he had gone anywhere away from the car, and canines didn't pick up a scent outside that parking lot. You're the investigator. What do you make of that? Yeah. Weird, huh? February 23rd, the National Park Service stated that they were going to call off the search for John Wood. A man named Len Robenchuk was chief of Acadia Park operations and stated that they had not found any evidence that John may be located in the park. Well, they stated that before, remember, with Chris Conley. The only theory they had was that John got too close to the water. Well, that's pretty weird because there's a cliff there, and then there's rocks below the cliff, and then there's a long ways, and then there's the water. Do you really think John went down onto those boulders dressed up all nice like he was? I don't think so. His body never washed up on any shore anywhere. His car was looked at thoroughly. It wasn't damaged, hadn't been tampered with, and all of the personal possessions he traveled with were in the car. He merely just disappeared. Now, winter weather, fog and snow, inundated the area, inhibited the searchers, so weather was a clue. He's right next to the ocean, so you have water. Canines couldn't pick up a scent. No scent trail. He's not listed in any National Park Service documents as a long-time missing person. They just had the case, washed their hands of it. No clue where he went. That's it. As with so many of these missing persons cases, we really have to look at these in a different way. That's the best way I could say it, politely. The Park Service is going to help. They're never going to release a list of missing people. And I think the transparency that we all wish for from the National Park Service U.S. Forest Service, probably will never happen. Which is why I'll keep trying to dig to find more connections on these cases. But friends, I've stated 100 times, I'll say it again. Water is a big key on all of these. Big key. I thought she was asleep. Maybe she's having a dream. So I want to say thank you for being here and watching the show. Do not get ripped off by going to Amazon, eBay, etc. and buying my books for $100, $200 each. You can come to my website, NA, like North America, nabigfootsearch.com, buy the books for $25. And we have 12 books available. 2 DVDs, you can buy DVDs of our movies, Missing 411, Missing 411 The Hunted, Missing 411 The UFO Connection. You can also watch them for free on Tubi, Tubi. If you don't get Tubi, you can watch them on Amazon and Apple. Thank you. Be safe. Enjoy this great weather. Huck says ARF. Paulides out.